You can just make sure, Kelly, that it's centered. Pure Dog Talk, Friday Night Forum, thank you for coming. And if you get to eat a lot of extra food, lucky you. Thank you very much to our panelists this evening. Our AKC Executive Field Representative, yeah, I did it right, Bryan Martin, Executive, that's the executive part, that's very cool. And our AKC Judge, Bryan Meyers, and our AKC Judge, Sylvie, McGee. Yes? Did it right. You did it right. And I'm your moderator, Laura Reeves. You guys feel free to ask questions. Bryan is going to speak a little bit on the new judging process that's just started. AKC has just changed its process. Am I allowed to say again? Okay. And so for people who are looking at judging eventually, this is another process that they've selected. Bryan Meyers has been judging for a good length of time, has that experience. Sylvie is just getting started, has that experience. So if you guys have questions, shout out and I'll bring you a microphone, and we're live streaming and audio recording. So welcome and thank you. Here you go, Bryan.
Okay. The American Kennel Club, as many of you know, they've had, I don't know how many different ones since you started judging, systems. Many different systems, and they just haven't clicked. And then they revamped the entire there was a period of time where the application included, you had to write an essay, basically, about the breed and your experiences with the breed. And then that was sent to a committee. The committee was made up of one field rep, one office person, Tim Thomas, and 3 other chosen people by the board of directors that rotated every month. So the same committee did not hear all the applications every time. And that got very tiring, and the conference calls that we had would take 2 or 3 hours to review these applications. And it got long and drawn out, and people didn't feel they were being fairly worked on. So then they came up in 2015 with it's an educational based program that you earned points for seminars that you attended, mentor sessions, ringside observations. If you were judging sporting breeds, you'd go to a field trial, you'd get points for attending that. It was a good system, and then it ran off the rails because judges took advantage of it. And they refer to it as a sport that was being looted at the time. In 2.5 years, over 700 judges submitted additional breed applications in 2.5 years. 1,828 applications for additional breeds in that time period. 11,051 breeds were approved under that system.
In 2.5 years?
In 2.5 years. One judge had as many as 9 applications at one time. He was on permit for over 75 breeds. Some of you may know who that person is. There's a couple of them that fall into that category.
You're live right now.
Kelly wants to make sure we know we're live.
And approximately 80 judges received 31 or more breeds in that 2.5 year period. And it just was going off the rails. And so they said, you know,
Bryan's computer hates it.
my new computer is, something's not right here. So in August of last year, 17, the chairman of the board established a committee to address the growing concerns of the AKC and the FANCY with the process with which judges are approved and reviewed. And they stopped applications. They limited the all breed applications to only 10 breeds at a time. And you could still apply while you were on permit, but you had to, that was still a problem. They needed to tighten the whole program up. So they've done some, they refer to it as evolutionary, not revolutionary. The fix of the current versus creating a completely new process. They didn't want to redo the whole thing again and upset applicants. So they've just fine-tuned this the 2015 program. And it maintained the framework, but it just brought everything down. So some of the things that they did now is that you can only put in one application every 6 months. And you can't get a full group in less than a year and a half or in less than 3 applications. So that tightened everything up because there were judges that were getting full groups, 20, 30 breeds in a full group, and I'll tell you, doing an interview for that's an all-day affair. You know, the new interview process is very basic. When you have your interview with me, we only spend about 10 minutes per breed discussing it, but we talk about the salient points of the breed, disqualifications, give me a description, give me some background, and do it all in 10 minutes. And if you can't do that, then you don't pass the interview. But for you to get to me, you still have had to have done what they call the matrix, where you have to get so many points determined by the seniority of your judging. So we did, there were no changes to the first-time applicants. The same prerequisites were there, the same minimum criteria to apply. They just limited the maximum number of breeds that one could apply, and maintain the fact that you had to finish all of your permit breeds before you could put in a second application. Once you do your complete all your requirements of, at the time, the first system, you just needed 3 assignments. They didn't care whether you had any entries or not. And after 3 assignments, boom, you're good. Thank you, congratulations, you can judge whatever. And that worked for the low entry breeds, but you still didn't learn anything as a judge. And doing 3 entries 3 times doesn't really test your application. So now they've upped it or changed it around now, so you now have to, on every group of permit breeds that you have, so you say you apply for 10 breeds and you're given permit status for 10 breeds, you have to judge each breed at least 3 times, and of that group of 10 breeds, you need evaluations. They call them a JBC, a Judge's Breed Commentary, which is where you write a critique of your entry. I, as the field rep, stands outside the ring and does a critique of the entry, and then we go sit down somewhere later in the day and we discuss it. We don't argue about it. Nobody fights. Nobody tells you you're stupid or anything. What we now can do is recommend that you might need to go back to your mentors or go back to your educators and go back for more schooling. We have that power. There's a little box on the form. But it works out very well, but you need 3 observations from 3 different field reps of your 10 breeds, however long. And if you have a low entry breed and you don't have, you can get approved for your low entry breed, but if you don't judge any of them, but you at least have to have 6 assignments of the low entry breeds. Whether you judge 1 or you judge a national, you still have to judge it at least 3 times with an entry, and if it's part of your package, then you get an observation. So that is working really good, I think. What's scaring older judges, like Bryan here, his next application, he goes back.
He just called you old, Bryan.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, what, you've got 4 groups, right?
Yes.
He's got 4 groups. Now, on his next application, he has to write to the office and ask if he can apply for breeds. He just can't put in his application. He has to ask the judging department, and the judging department may say yay, or hold off a year, or we want you to calm down and do, if you haven't, say if you've had, most of the judges, if they've got 4 groups and they've had those 4 groups for 2 or 3 years total for all those groups, those will advance to a 5th group, but they're not going to give you the whole group. You still fall back to the 3 applications minimum to fulfill the group. And he now has to be observed, which he hasn't been observed since whenever.
Davy Crockett was just.
So,
2001?
2001. He hasn't had an observation report or hasn't had anything. They've just, boom, go on, you're good, keep going. Well, now they've slowed it down, and now any subsequent applications and additional applications, like Sylvie, she doesn't have a full group yet. She'll continue with the JBCs, which she was on that system last year. Bryan wasn't. Now that the new system's kicked in, he's going to have to be observed, and he's going to have to sit down and talk to one of us about his entries, which there's nothing wrong with that. Really, when you think about it.
Did you ask him?
Number 1, when they took the last system, they took the AKC reps out of the whole equation, and they didn't watch anybody other than the new people.
Yeah, we just watched first-time applicants.
You just gave me the mic and now you're talking.
The last system that started in 2015, the only people we looked at were people that had less than a full group. Once you got a full group status, bye-bye, you're on your own. And you couldn't even request an observation. They wouldn't, the office wouldn't let us even look at you. We could do off-the-record discussion, but nothing official. And that frustrated a lot of judges. It's been amazing. Judges want to know they're doing a good job. A lot of them do. Then there's some that just crank it out, let's go, I'm going to be an all-breed judge. That, whatever.
Okay, is that?
So, that's basically, in a nutshell,
Okay.
some of the highlights of the thing. You have to, as a new judge, a new applicant judge, you have to take the Judges Basic Institute. They offer 5 of them throughout the country each year. If you want to do junior showmanship, you have to take a junior showmanship judging seminar. I've done those. We do those separate from the Basic Institute. All of us field reps are required to do at least one of those a year away from the institutes. So there are plenty of opportunities to do juniors, and the numbers of, they call them CEUs, or the credit educational units or something, I think. We just call them CEUs. What?
Continuing education.
Continuing education, I should know that.
There you go.
Thank you, Sylvie.
Here is for you.
So that's
Okay.
in a nutshell.
Okay. All
Okay.
right. Very good. So now let's get a chance to talk to Bryan and Sylvie and talk about why you started judging, why you put yourself through this 16 different processes. Why? I mean, seriously, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of money. Why do you do it?
Well, we didn't make the changes. KC made the changes, but it's the only game in town, so if you're gonna play, you play by their rules. No one's forcing you to have a judge's license. It's simple as that. I've been involved in dogs my whole life. My parents I grew up with boxers because they had boxers before I was born. Showed dogs professionally, I apprenticed under a handler. It's just the natural progression. I got too old for some of the, I mean, you know, there's older people than I am that are still showing dogs. But I don't miss loading and unloading. Hauling exercise pens and setting up tables and dealing with clients. I love the dogs. The clients can be a real pain sometimes, depending on your client.
Hire good clients, man, I'm saying.
And now that they have cell phones, you know, I imagine you can't hardly get out of the ring before someone's calling and saying, "What did I do? Why didn't Poopsie win?"
That's a fact.
Now at least they'll be able to say, well, he's probably gonna have a discussion with the AKC rep.
So what brings you joy when you're judging? What do you love about judging?
Finding maybe the dog that nobody else has found. Maybe it's a puppy dog. Maybe it's a puppy bitch. I don't care. I don't even care what class it came out of. It could be a novice person that doesn't really have an idea what they're doing. You're not judging their ability. You're judging what the dog is supposed to look like according to the standard. And I like being around the dogs. I've known lots of people my whole life.
And Sylvie?
So I was never a professional handler. I'm an exhibitor and I'm a breeder. Back when I had been showing about a minute and a half, I was asked to bring our very first show bitch to judge's education as a sample dog. And Bill Russell said, well, if you want, you can stay for some of the other workshops that day. And he wasn't going to charge me, right? So I stayed. And I thought, oh my God, people are actually talking about dogs here. Because outside of specialties, nobody was talking about dogs at dog shows. Not very much. They were talking about winning, they were talking about placements, they were talking about what the judges were doing right or wrong, but they weren't really talking about dogs. And at Judges Ed, people were talking about dogs, and I thought, this is my thing, because I like talking about dogs, and I like learning about dogs. So I started going to Judges Ed, like way before I was ever going to be a judge, just to talk about dogs. And then I kept going. And that sort of got me to the point where I thought maybe I should apply. And I also had mentors who were saying, you should apply. You should apply sooner rather than later, because it takes a long time to get through your first group, and God forbid you want a second group, it takes a really long time to get through that. So I applied, and I really love it. I judged today. I had a great time. I love the dogs. I love everything about judging, really. I love it when novice people come into the ring, because if I can give them some encouragement, or maybe say, you know, let's move that dog one more time, maybe loosen up that lead a little bit, that's a gift to them, and it helps me to see the dog better, and it's a lot of fun.
So,
That's why I do it.
Okay, so what are your, I'm not gonna say your pet peeves, because God forbid, but Bryan, no rolling your eyes, remember, we're supposed to be good. What makes a challenge for you? What makes you frustrated as a judge? Bryan, particularly, you've been doing this for a number of years. What makes you frustrated?
Well, it can be a lot of things. I mean, no one has, maybe some of you are expert groomers in a particular breed. And there's a lot of people that are beginning, maybe they've been in it 10 years and they aren't real good groomers or what have you. But everyone should be able to present their dog clean, without mats. If you have a short-coated dog, you know, everybody, just people with toys, they say, we don't have to cut our dog's toenails. They can, I mean, they come in with real, they're like hawks, some of them. And some of the big dog people are too. But on the same token, one of the things that is kind of an irritating, I know maybe irritating is the wrong thing to use. You use the same pattern all day long, and your last breed of the day, your last class of the day, the person looks at you and goes, did you want me to make a triangle when you've been going down and back all day? I mean, you have to watch what a person is doing before you walk into the ring to prepare yourself. So that's probably one of my pet peeves.
Sylvie?
Dirty dogs. Yeah, I think if you talk to any judge, dirty dogs
I
is
imagine
sort
there's
of
that many
high
dirty
up on their
dogs.
list.
Oh.
kidding.
So imagine that you're the judge, and you're in the middle of the ring, and all these people are watching you, right? And you're thinking to yourself, do I dare, now that I've gone over this dog, who is filthy, go over and visibly use a handy wipe or use hand sanitizer before I touch this next exhibit, because I don't want to transfer whatever I just picked up on my hands? What a lousy position to put us in. Please bathe your dogs.
Okay, Pure Dog Talk listeners, if you are coming with dirty dogs, you are definitely getting a demerit. I'm just saying, that is absolutely not okay. Okay, so, questions from the audience. Let's start a conversation here, and I think it's important for people to understand is one of the reasons we started doing this basic thing is that judges are people, right? They started in dogs, they have a passion for dogs. They are not hatched from an egg. And I think it's important, AKC has enforced a good thing in making sure there's no conflict of interest, but I think in a certain way it has taken something away, and we've lost the bench shows, and we've lost the opportunity for people to actually talk to one another that just happens to be a judge with a lot of knowledge. And so that's what this is for. And
The same as with breeders with knowledge. You have to be able, you can't always, you have to be able to talk to the people within your own breed.
Right.
Because you don't necessarily know more than the person next to you that's in the same breed.
And depending on who it is, maybe not as much.
You can go to a seminar presented by 5 different people of the same breed and come away learning something different from each of those seminars.
Absolutely.
We are also, you as exhibitors are not necessarily the most compassionate people with new people.
Yep.
I'm going to
Yep.
put some of that on you people because you're the ones that should be helping these new people that are coming in, because maybe they'll want to get a good dog from you or you.
Be nice. Bryan, the other Bryan.
I just want to add that part of the revisions of the judging process, applications and such, the board did a survey a couple years ago. Some of you may have gotten it. They got, I think, 2,000 responses to it or something. And one of the major concerns about exhibitors railing against judges was that judges were not doing a concise examination. They were not doing an examination for the salient points. Salient points meaning what makes a breed a breed. What makes a basset hound a basset hound? It has to have crooked front legs. Has to. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And if you can't figure that out, that's where they stepped up our observations. So what we do in preparation for an observation of a judge is we study the standard, or we review videos, or we've gone to seminars ourselves, and we judge along. And if we find that, you know, you're not doing the proper examination on an Old English sheepdog's head, the exhibitors go crazy. Same thing with Portuguese water dogs. If you don't hit that headpiece just right and feel that coat texture right, the exhibitors get crazy because they don't think they're being judged fairly. And oftentimes they're, and I've been subject to it as a handler, and I'm sure Bryan was too, that certain breeds we were able to just walk in the ring and boom, the judge looked at us and said, go to the head of the line, because I know you always have a quality dog. We didn't always have the quality dog. We didn't have the best open dog in the class. And that would frustrate the other exhibitors, the newbies, or even the seasoned breeders. And they'd get mad because the judge wasn't judging. He was just pointing and he was just handing out ribbons. So the Kennel Club determined that, you know, we step up these observations of these judges, bring it to their attention, you know, that as you're judging, you know, why don't you, judging Tibetan Terriers, I never saw you separate the coat, lift it, and drop it. I never saw you did that. Well, that's real important in that breed because it's a double-coated breed and it has to drop just right. It can't be single-coated. But if you don't at least make an attempt to look at it as a judge, you're not going to get entries. That people aren't going to come back to you because they say, well, what the hell does he know? He's not judging dogs, he's just handing out ribbons. So we try to help our judges along in that respect and help them understand what's going on with his entries.
Okay. Okay, so passing the mic, this is kind of like passing the hat. So, who has questions? We're gonna start over here. Cheyenne was right on it. Hang on a second, Cheyenne. It's okay, this is good. This is our young up and coming. Hit it.
From you two, Bryan and Sylvie, pretending this Bryan is not here. What do you guys really think of this new system being in it? I mean, you're kind of going through it. Do you think it's better than the one you probably started working on, and why? And for you, I mean, you said you haven't been reviewed since 2001. Are you looking forward to that process again, or do you wish they would just pretending Bryan's not here? Don't look at that.
No, that's fine.
Do you, would you rather they, continue to not review you because
No.
you feel like you're
No,
doing a good
I
job?
have no problem.
So that question.
Okay, I have no problem with the way it is set up now that you have a discussion.
Mhm.
Everyone can learn from a discussion. Some of the people in the past, in Bryan's position, maybe came along too harshly. Why did you put this dog third and I would have put it fourth? Who cares? You know, if you have the best dog and you missed it, you left it out of the ribbons, then we maybe have a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a discussion, which I believe people like Bryan and most of the people now will have a discussion. And if you can say, well, did you realize maybe it had a bad bite? Some things that from outside the ring, you as exhibitors, you get a totally different aspect of a dog if you see it up close than if you see it outside the ring. And I have no problem. Sure, any system is going to be flawed. Does this one have some things that I would change? Probably, but it's far better than the giveaway they had before. And that's all I can say about it, is the last one was a giveaway. It was a complete farce.
Okay, Sylvie?
Okay, so I've been through 3 systems. I started with the essay system. I'm a grant writer, so I love that system. I thought it was just like right up my alley. I'd probably have a whole group by now if we just get stuck with that. But I guess I want to say something about the most recent change to the system. Yes, some judges took advantage of it. Some judges advanced far faster than they should have. A lot of us didn't. A lot of us played by the intent, not just the way you could work the system. So it feels somewhat like the most recent changes caught some people in a net that we weren't doing anything wrong to begin with, and we were taking our judging seriously. So that, that's sort of like, really, guys, I feel like my hand is getting slapped because some kid in the back was throwing spitballs. Do you know what I mean? But I think that the system is very accessible and understandable. It's clear what you need to do. And I think it doesn't reflect anything that hasn't always been of value. Kennel visits are of value. Having a long-term mentor is of value. Being tutored by people who are not your long-term mentor because they bring a different perspective on that breed is of value. Going to national specialties is expensive, and that's just a fact, right? But honestly, you're never going to see the depth of quality in a breed that you're going to see at a national specialty, and if you really want to judge a breed, you should go. And if that means that it slows you down, it slows you down. I have travel booked this year so far for 5 national specialties. Some in hounds, some in working, which I hope to do at some point in the future. And I guess one of the messages that I wanted, this question didn't get asked, but one of the messages that I wanted to give is start early. Do a lot of things to acquaint yourself with the breeds that you really love. Focus first on the breeds that you truly love and enthusiastic about, because then it won't be a burden to you to do those things. And get it down on paper, because if it's not down on paper in AKC's world, it does not exist. So if you don't have the paper, all those hours that you spend talking to someone, it's just wind as far as they're concerned. So definitely document everything.
Bryan?
I just want to add something on the observations. When we do these JVC's, Judges Breed Commentaries, there are times where, most of the time, where I, standing outside the ring, and you all, everybody judges, so to speak, from outside the ring, but oftentimes I will not see eye color, I won't see bites, I won't see what's actually underneath the hair, so that makes an interesting conversation. I had a gentleman, I watched him do Rhodesian Ridgebacks a couple years ago, and I followed him right to the T with what he had in his dog classes. He had 10 dogs, and he boom, 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 did them, and okay, we're good. And then he had 20 bitches, and he got into his bitch classes, and about the 3rd bitch class, all of a sudden he takes a right-hand turn, and I don't know what's going on. I can't follow. I can follow, but it doesn't follow what he's done previously. So when we sit down and talk about it, I say, talk to me about your entry. He starts out, boom, right off the bat. I hated my class dogs. I hated them. And I just judged them because they looked like Rhodesian Ridgebacks, but they were bulky, and they were long, and they were this, or they were that. And he said, once I got into my bitches, I started to find stuff that I liked. I liked a smoother neck into the shoulders that I found in my bitches that I didn't have in my dog classes. You know what? You win as a judge. There's no argument. I can't argue with that. And I applaud you. And that's where we talk about the discussion. We just have a give and take, you know, and I might say, you know, between your first and second in the open class, tell me how you made your decision. And he'll say, well, my eye was drawn to the second dog right away, but once I put my hands on him, it was, you know, it was a drop-coated dog, a bearded collie, I think it was, and he said, I went over the body and it was the second place dog. It had this beautiful coat, beautifully presented. There was nothing underneath the hair. It was a tube, you know, and I need to have body in that breed. Bingo, you win. I don't argue. There's no argument here. You know, you explained how you made your decision. If he had said, you know, the first dog, I would like to have seen more body. The second dog had a beautiful body and and then I'll say, well, continue. Why did you go with your first dog over your second dog then? And let's talk about this. So, and you know, the older system, it got to be, you know, a judge would call the office and say, well, what the hell does that rep know? He only showed basset hounds and he's going to tell me about chihuahuas? You know, I know more about chihuahuas than he'll ever know. Excuse me, I read the standard. I've had experience, you know, showing them or carrying them or my wife showed them or whatever. I've had the experience with that breed. I know what it is, and you don't. But, you know, even if I did show basset hounds. So that's where it got to be argumentative. Now it's just a discussion.
Very good. Kelly, you had something? I saw you raise your hand. Did you forget?
No, I don't know. I have no motor control. I must have just.
Kelly accidentally raised her hand.
Just twitched. Just twitched.
Questions? Sometimes with Kelly that happens. Same. Questions, Jen?
I have
Here you
a
go.
question. Yeah, it's always.
I am watching.
It's okay. It's good.
So I have a question. Just recently this week, I read a paper that was about some low entry breeds. And has anybody else seen this yet?
I want to find out who wrote that.
It was a fascinating thing because I had no idea that there's 80 low entry breeds out of how many breeds do we have, Brian?
Most of which I show.
Well,
Yeah.
almost at 200 now.
Yeah, but still that's a significant amount. And so as judges, talking to our senior judge and our junior judge there, when you go into these low entry breeds, and part of the thing was that you're talking about if you don't judge them 6 times, you get to be a judge of the low entry breed. I think we need to have less judges that know more about some of these breeds to help with these ones that are imperiled breeds. And so what we have is me being a low entry breed person, is that I have judges just flinging papers at me, and it's like, hey, can you sign my mentor stuff? And I make mentors go through, I have to work with them with 2, maybe 3 shows before I'll even talk to them and get going, but they just want to get that rest of that group, and they're gonna hand me this paper and want me to sign it, and I say, no. I want you to understand my breed, because it is an imperiled breed, there's not that many of them out there. And it's frustrating being a low entry breed to know that the next day they went to somebody else who just signed a piece of paper. So as judges, especially if you have a bulk of a breed, and I'm sure in any group, there's low entry breeds in there that you don't see that often. What do you do as a judge, to kind of help keep these breeds from being imperiled? Because if they're not going to be successful in the breed ring, they're probably not going to get bred, and we're going to have less litters, we're going to have less conversion, and we're going to lose a breed. So do you take some extra time, or I'm just curious. This paper really.
Yeah,
It was an interesting paper.
I'm still trying to figure out where that came from.
Yeah.
Bryan, Sylvie, which one of you guys wants to take this one?
Ladies first. So the hound group is about 50% low entry breeds.
Yes, it's a very good example.
Right, and I just had my second Scottish Deerhound assignment, no dogs. I expect that as I go through the hound breeds, I'm going to have a lot of instances where I'm going to essentially get the breed, if the system stays the same long enough, where I'm essentially going to get the breed without ever having to put my hands on them beyond my preparation. So for me as a judge, what that means is I have to be willing to go the extra mile. I have to do kennel visits, I have to go to national specialties, I have to go to regional or club specialties. I have to find mentors and work with them over time. I think that for any of the breeds, including big entry breeds, the moment that you get given those breeds on permit is in some ways just the first day of phase 2 of your education. On permit for Rhodesian Ridgebacks, that's a big entry breed, right? When I apply for, you have to give you some sense of context, you have to have 10 points if you're got less than a breed, less than a group to apply for a breed. When I applied for Rhodesians, I had 21 points. I've done sweepstakes, I've done multiple sweepstakes, I've been to nationals a couple of times, I've done probably 5 judges education seminars, I've been mentored a lot in that breed. That doesn't mean that I'm an expert in Rhodesian Ridgebacks. It means that I went into that application fairly confident that the first time I walk into the ring, I'll recognize a good dog when I see it, but it certainly doesn't mean I'm an expert. With low entry breeds, it's gonna be much harder for me to get that depth of preparation, so then it's incumbent on me to just try to keep educating myself on that breed and go the places where they are.
I just hope through this conversation and that judges will take a little more time with these low entry breeds because they are becoming imperiled. It's like, what, there's like 3 litters of dandies a year or something, you know?
Yeah.
And there's no way to find majors,
Right.
and, you know, it's
Well,
getting tough.
Norwegian Lindenhunds,
Linden,
they're
yes.
probably going, they're outbreeding to
Yeah.
a different breed
Hmm.
because they can't get them in well.
Yeah.
So the breed is just going to die otherwise. And people aren't gonna rehab them to go and get the puffins.
Yeah.
Because we don't really have any puffins here, do we?
No
Not
puppy.
on here, not on this coast.
But years ago, they had the same problem, not with the number of breeds, but they also had low entry breeds. And the AKC would let you combine your sexes to count points.
That was
I
a
don't
long
know.
time ago.
Yes, but I don't know whether anyone's given that any kind of consideration up in New York.
I haven't heard yet.
No, I've not heard any.
Although we
rumor.
talked about it this weekend, that might be another option to throw into the mix.
But
You
it's
know-
just a temporary fix, still. It's,
For judges
It ends
edu-
up with champions, it doesn't end up with more better dogs.
right.
right.
As far as education, the office, Tim Thomas has had a judges department in Raleigh, and he has a list of specified mentors for each low entry breed that can do a telephone discussion. If they're in Florida and you're living out here, you know, to do a kennel visit to just learn about a certain breed is, they understand that's expensive. So you can do a telephone conversation and you know, and then they can, that person is authorized to sign off on your mentor sheet. So that helps. And I think that's being taken advantage, and not, it's being utilized, is what I should say. It's not being taken advantage of, it's being utilized more so than it ever has been. But to throw it back on what we discussed earlier, you guys as exhibitors, breeders that are gonna go into judging, truly have to welcome these people in and take them in rather than, you know, just consider them as point fodder half the time. And you know, that you know, well, yeah, come to the dog show, so because we need points, and then they come to the dog show and nobody talks to them, and these people go, huh? You know, what are we doing here? You know, you gotta, everybody's gotta play a part in this.
Right, absolutely, and I think Bryan makes a really good point, both Bryans, that it is incumbent on all of us to be nice to people. Just be nice, guys. I mean, really, this isn't rocket science. Just be, yeah, peace. Peace, Kelly says peace. Just be nice, you know? You don't have to let them win. Oh, Kelly says I'm out of the video. But you don't have to let somebody, you know, or do something special. Just be nice. So I think that that's something that sometimes we lose track of when we're busy being mad because we didn't win, or mad because somebody else's dog won, or whatever. Let's work on the be nice part. More questiones. Vanessa? Do you have one? Luke, you had a cool thing. I think you should throw that out. No? Okay. Casey and Lou?
Not a question, just a comment.
Okay, just a minute. Sorry, people, didn't mean to walk in front of the camera.
We're extremely new exhibitors. We've had our produced water dog since May of 2016, and traveled extensively with our breeder to gain this championship. We're now showing him ourselves to the grand championship, and I have to say that we felt very welcomed by the judges and other exhibitors entirely. I would say one thing, as still being somewhat of an outsider, I've noticed a lot on the owner-handler side. There just seems to be kind of a disconnect in terms of it's an owner-handled dog versus a professionally handled dog, and the owner-handled dog gets select frequently, the professionally handled dog gets breed. There's still a lot of that out there. I'm new to this. I'm just kind of reporting what I see. I don't know how any kind of a change is going to be affected on that, but I certainly see it being a discouragement for newer exhibitors to owner handle their dogs. But I mean, we felt very welcome, I will say.
Okay, anybody want to take that one?
Well, I'll comment. I've noticed that the owner-handled competition initially started out as another ribbon to win for a lot of people. And people that like to show their dogs didn't mind getting select or getting best owner handled. It's really getting competitive out there.
God, yeah.
And you owner handlers are raising your bar with your trimming. You're getting better at trimming. There's nothing wrong with, as an owner handler, to sit and watch a professional handler. Tag them, follow them around all day. Sit in the grooming area. Say, do you mind if I just sit over here? Can I watch you trim today? Every handler is going to say, pull up a chair, ask any question. But they're not going to hold a forum just because they got the scissors out and they, okay, anybody want to watch me trim? I'm going to trim now. They don't do that. But if you make an effort to ask, there isn't a handler out there that won't share. You just have to be a little bit more forward with it, that's all. And I think that's an important part, and that helps the rapport of all the exhibitors. And then when exhibitors are better educated and have better performances, whether they have good training classes or whoever their mentor is, I know as a professional, I welcomed the competition. I didn't like to beat the lackeys or whatever you wanted to call the lesser abled person, that brought in dirty dogs or brought in untrimmed dogs or whatever. That wasn't competition for me. That was just collecting a ribbon for the day, and I didn't like that. I still don't like it, and I think this owner-handled game has upped it, and I know there was discussion that at some of the bigger shows they wanted to give ribbons for 5th and 6th in some of the bigger groups at bigger shows. They discussed this a couple years ago, and they thought, oh no, we don't need any more ribbons. I always thought, if the guy that's got 5th or 6th is standing there waiting for a ribbon, and he kind of looks up that line and he says, damn, I'm in good shape here. I'm playing with the big boys now. And he might go out and get a better trim on his dog or buy a better dog so he can continue to play with the big boys, because that's fun to beat the big boys and girls. You know, so it's, but you have to make an effort.
Okay, all right, we have time for,
I have
go ahead.
one-
Okay, you
I have
go.
one question, and you people are gonna have to all be honest. How many of you people have read your own standard? That's pretty good, let me tell you. I've asked people after they improperly presented their own breed, I said to them, how many of you have read your own standard? And I had like maybe 2 out of about 20 that said they had. It's really sad. You have to read your own standard before you can sit there and criticize.
You have to know what you've got and be
Right.
honest with yourself.
Right.
You should be able to walk into the ring and say, if I beat that dog today, this guy doesn't know anything.
Okay, I see questions, I'm coming this way, so, all right, walking in front of the camera again, sorry. I've got Cheryl and I've got Jen, so, and Sharon, okay, there you go.
Kind of going on that subject of not reading the standard, I've been really frustrated at some of the bigger shows lately, looking at a rare breed. And a lot of the dogs nowadays look totally different than 10 years ago. My dog 10 years ago.
In your breed you're talking about?
Yes, in my breed, would look totally different. I mean, they wouldn't even be able to they look totally different. And what's happening, I think, is judges are putting a certain dog, started putting a certain dog up. All these newbies started purchasing dogs that look just like this dog. So now when I was at Westminster last week, I almost wanted to cry, because I could only, out of 17 dogs, I would only have probably taken 5 of those dogs at this point. And one of those dogs 8 years ago, I was not even in the running as a dog I'd take home. And what I realized too, in the last year or two, when I've gone to like the specialties, none of those people that are showing or breeding those dogs or exhibiting them have been at any of the judging seminars, have been where they emphasize the standard. And then I don't know what's happening, but these judges are putting these dogs up that they're not this tight, they're too long, they're over-angulated, they're U-necked.
So do we have a question?
Well, I'm just like, how do you stop? That's one of the things I want to be as a judge. It's motivating me, because I want to try to find a way to stop this before the breed, as a rare breed, is ruined. And can we come back?
That's where your parent club comes into play.
Okay, so good question, Cheryl, and I've got 2 people anxious to answer here.
Okay, so the first thing is we can only judge what you bring us. So if your breed is going off the rails, frankly, we can still only judge what you bring us. So unless you want to see us withholding a lot, right?
Yeah.
We're unfortunately going to be judging the breed that's gone off the rails. So for me, it goes back to, and now I'm going to put my breeder exhibitor hat back on. If we are not good mentors, which often means having difficult discussions with people in our own breed,
Yeah.
to say, that dog that you're showing, have you thought about how this relates to our standard? Have you thought about, gee, you've got a Basset that really is frankly lacking in bone. Have you thought about what breeding decision you're gonna make for your next breed to correct that? Because that's not right under our standard. I come from Bassets, right? So we have to be mentoring within our breed to change that going off the rails direction, and I think that goes back to us as breeders before the judges can do much with it.
Well, I think we actually, right after that, some people finally came up on Facebook and said, we gotta stop this, and started posting some pictures of, look at this 8 years ago, this lineup, now look at this lineup this year.
Right.
I'm hoping this is gonna start.
Right, Bryan?
Which one, me?
You, Bryan.
But
Middle Bryan.
still, the whole thing is, let's say there's a dog that is the standard, and then you got 10 of these others, and that dog looks so different. that the judges aren't even really looking at that dog.
Right,
That
they're
definitely
afraid to
counts as
make
a
the
robbery.
decision that the odd one out might be the best one. It's
Yeah.
easier to point to the ones that all look alike.
Yeah, and it's kind of scary now.
I know. You have to have confidence that, you know, the judging process is getting better.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is.
Mhm.
One thing I think that I found as a handler, I had a situation years ago showing a Great Pyrenees. And the judge, there were two of them in the best of breed class. And the judge came up and he opened the dog's mouth and he had two dropped teeth in the lower, right in the center, and they were dropped. And he opens the dog's mouth, he says, "Oh, I don't like that. That's not right." Well, I got proactive, and I just said, "It's perfectly acceptable in the standard." And he was a very colorful gentleman, and he goes, "Time out!" Real loud. And he goes and sits down at his table, and he takes papers out of his bag, and he's looking and looking and looking, and he reads the standard, and he said to me, "There's nothing in this standard that allows that." And I said, "What's the date on your standard?" And he flipped it over, he said, "Well, 1939. And I said, "That standard's been adjusted. They've changed that standard to allow that." Time out! And they called the superintendent over, they brought the book of standards, and I said, "What year is in the book?" "The 1939. And he's going through his papers, and he goes through, he says, "Whoop, whoop, whoa!" And he found the new standard, he had it. And he read it. Oh no, he couldn't find it. And my wife came up with the new standard. And he said, "Oh, I can't look at it. It may have been doctored." And it was the printed standard from the American Kennel Club, the pocket versions that they used to have, which were really great to fit a briefcase, great. "No, I can't look at it. Might be doctored." And then he found the new standard, and he read it, and he says, "You know, you're right. It is acceptable." The other dog's still going best of breed. But if you're not proactive by knowing what your standard is, and a judge happens to open his mouth and say something like that, it opens a door and it establishes a dialogue. And I think your approach to judges, win, lose, or draw, how you can approach them later, most of the judges will enter into a discussion with you.
Polite
Be
discussion.
polite. Don't go in there with your hair on fire and you're spitting and you're foaming at the mouth. And, you know, go back to the setup, go back to your car, sit down, have a cigarette, whatever you got to do to calm down, and then come back and get them between between breeds or hours or during the groups. Say, "Excuse me, Mr. Meyer, can we talk about Great Pyrenees today?" And I don't know what the percentage would be, but a better number than not will say, "Sure, let's talk about it."
but don't say, "Why didn't you like my dog?"
Right.
Yeah.
Because you know what? After 100 or 150 dogs, I'm not gonna remember Booksy.
But if you want to learn about the breed, and you may find out the guy didn't have a clue what he's judging. Okay, that's why you lost. He didn't have a clue.
You thought he was judging Pomeranians. You had a Great Pyrenees. That's why you lost.
Just thought it was short on mic.
Okay, Janet, did you have a question?
I can't remember what it was.
This short-term memory in this group. I don't know. Sharon, I know Sharon had a question. Do you remember your question, Sharon?
I have short-term memory too.
Okay.
I remember.
Okay, here we go.
It's not exactly a question, it's more of a comment based on being a judge's education chair and as well as a judge. When I do my judge's education, or when I did, I'm retired, but I always, the first question I asked, how many of you have read the breed standard? And like you said, they kind of look at you like, you know, deer in headlights. Really? Read the breed standard. I do the same thing when I'm mentoring people. have you read the breed standard? Oh, yeah. When was the last time you read the breed standard? And it's amazing how many breeders and exhibitors, they read it when they got their first dog and they haven't opened it since. And, I mean, I've had my breed for 42 years, but every time I read the standard, something clicks again as to its importance or basically lack of importance in the overall picture and like that. So for people who are being mentored or people who are mentoring, I think that's a really important question, particularly in the recent, how recently
read your
you
standard?
studied it.
And how recently have you read your standard? I like that. Karen?
So I don't really have a question, but I ring steward a lot, and I'm the chief ring steward for several shows. And I get a lot of people who, I need 75 dogs to be a steward for to become a judge. And I tell them if they don't want to do a full day's work, that it isn't really worth doing, and that I encourage all of the people that want to be stewards, not just to do the basics. The more you steward, the better you learn procedure. And I have learned so much about breeds that I would have never paid attention to, the terriers especially. I read the standard about spanning, but I had no clue it was. And I probably stewarded for terrier judges for a long time before I saw when a judge do it. And after he was done, I asked, what were you doing picking up the dog? And he took the time to show me how to do it, and I judged a match a couple months later, and the terrier people were just amazed. But it's just, you learn so much by interacting with the people. And I read standards all the time because you always are learning something new. It's like, why is that dog doing that? And then it's like, oh, well, they're not supposed to. It's just flashy. Or they're doing that because it's the correct thing to do.
I don't know. I used to read breed standards for fun. That was like what I did. So I don't know about you guys. Okay, more questions. We're reaching the end of our appointed hour. Our judges will turn into pumpkins if we don't let them go soon. So
I have two comments.
two comments from the middle, Bryan.
Okay, the first thing is you have to remember that judging is subjective. Look around and the person across from you or in back of you may have the same breed as you, and I'll bet you have difference of opinions on what happened today or whatever. And the other thing is the adjectives that are used in a standard, all the adjectives that are used. What does moderate mean to you or you or you? You'll probably come up with 3 different answers, or however many people are in here, 12 different answers of what moderate is.
Absolutely.
As an example of an adjective used in many standards.
Sylvie, any final remarks?
So I'm a pretty new judge, and when I judge particularly my permit breeds, which is most of them, I will often ask exhibitors after I'm done judging, I can see that you're the breeder of several dogs that are related. How would you line up your dogs? I hope I never see that on Facebook, that I've done that, and that somehow it means I don't know what I'm talking about. Because what it really means is, I really care about your breed. I really want to understand your breed. If you're a breeder and I know that you've had litter mates in, right? I'm really interested in how would you have placed those dogs? As a breeder, what would you think? Because I like talking about how I place dogs in my breeding program. You know, why did I keep this one and send this one away? Why should this one go to one home and this one go to another? To me, it's all an extension of talking about dogs. So, you know, give judges the benefit of the doubt that when we ask you those questions, it's not so much that we don't know what we're talking about, it's that we want to have a deeper understanding of where your breed is coming from, where you want your breed to go, what you want your breed to be like. Mr. Bryan?
No, I don't have anything. I've said enough.
Well, this has been a very wonderful group of people. Thank you. Thank you very kindly.
Oh,
To our
one thing,
panelists. Wait, no?
I thought you were done.
I was.
Brian! Maybe. Maybe not.
I just wanted to note that anybody that has any questions at any time, don't be afraid to come talk to me. I'll do my best to explain the situation or what can be done or what can't be done, what's gonna count for your judge's application, what's not gonna count for your judge's application, what you have to do. We've just had our field rep conference in Raleigh the last 3 days, and we're chock full of mind-expanding
Vim and vigor.
new stuff now that we'd love to pass on. So don't be afraid, and I don't bite, and I'm a nice guy some of the time.
Most of the
So,
time, yeah.
You know, so don't be afraid to address me. So I just wanted to lay that out for you all.
All right.
And I would second that. I've known Bryan since I was showing for about a second and a half, because of course I showed Bassett's and he beat me all the time.
Don't choke, Brian.
But he, which wasn't hard with my handling skills, but he doesn't bite.
No, absolutely. He's a good one. All right, thank you all. Please, eat more. All right, have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.